James Cameron's Avatar 2 has finally arrived in theatres, and there's a lot to break down regarding the highly anticipated sequel. I'm going to be diving into the plot, explaining the ending, and further story details that take place within the expanded world of Pandora to help you guys put together a much greater picture of the Avatar universe, especially when it comes to what's next with Avatar 3. As a warning, this analysis will contain spoilers, so if you do happen to be someone who hasn't seen the film yet, then I would recommend watching this video after you've seen it. If you want to keep up to date on all of my Avatar 2 videos coming over the next few weeks, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water Explained. So after 13 years, Avatar: The Way of Water continues the storyline of James Cameron's 2009 film, which went on to become the highest grossing movie of all time. The science fiction epic pays tribute to classic blockbusters of the past and continues its tale about a native civilization fighting back against a now returned technologically advanced human army. While Avatar 2 may be similar at times in its central plot to the first film, it's this time around so that it becomes a much more emotional tale through the telling of a family trying to stay together in the face of a potentially devastating situation. And as we reach Avatar 3 and move beyond it, we'd guess that based on the way this movie ends, that the Sullys will come up against more issues while trying to keep their pact. As a brief recap, the previous film ended with the humans forced to leave Pandora after their failed attempt to destroy the Tree of Souls, a heavily sacred location for the Na'vi tribe. And right at the beginning of Avatar: The Way of Water, Jake Sully fills us in on what's been going on for him and Ney'tiri in the 13 years since that happened. Jake tells us, and we see in the opening prologue, how he and Ney'tiri built a family and became the parents of a group of kids, which includes Loak, Netayam, and Tuk as their natural-born children. Then there's also Kiri, a girl that was mysteriously born from Grace's avatar body following her death in the first film, and while this still remains a mystery by the end of it, she clearly reminds us of Grace in many ways, and that's primarily because Sigourney Weaver has teamed with James Cameron to bring the girl to life with her performance. And Jake and Ney'tiri have further adopted a human son in Spider, who we learn is the son of the first film's villain, Miles Quaritch. We discover that following the original war, he was left on Pandora as a young child and eventually raised by scientists who remained on the planet. And while Spider wants to be a true Na'vi, we learn that Ney'tiri finds it difficult to get close to the boy as their adopted son because she knows that he is the son of Quaritch, who killed her father and almost destroyed her home. While this narrative beat does come into the limelight later on in the film, we gather that Spider is seen as a true brother by others, such as Netayam, and that he also likes Kiri, who looks back at him in a similar romantic way. Alongside the developments in Jake and Ney'tiri's new family, it's not long before we learn about the return of the humans and why they are really back all these years later. On one side of things, the RDA return to predictably mine more resources while also trying to stop Jake Sully from becoming a problem to that operation. Jake and Ney'tiri's peaceful family life is disrupted when spaceships arrive on the planet, and we learn that it's not only humans looking to gather the natural resources of Pandora, but also a resurrected Miles Quaritch and his team of recombinant marines. We switch focus to a somewhat origin for their resurrected selves, and we quickly learn that these recombinant marines don't remember their deaths from the original war, with their individual backups being cut out. But to fill Quaritch and his team in, we see the human versions of them speaking to their resurrected avatar selves in videos that they recorded just in case. In human Quaritch's video, he says that if recombinant Quaritch did ever watch this video, it would mean that he would be looking for revenge against Jake Sully. But when Quaritch and co arrive on Pandora, we learn about something that makes their visit this time a bit more interesting to the previous one. We are told by the new military leader that their arrival on Pandora is not just about collecting the moon's precious resources, but that it's also part of the first step into making the planet a new home for the humans, following the mention that their world is now on the brink of total collapse. We did learn that Earth was in a bad state in the opening sequences of the original film, but this time it seems like there's more urgency surrounding its current position. This marks the end of the prologue, where we jump forward a year after the humans' return and learn that Jake and the Na'vi have begun smaller battles against the humans, which involves them attacking their supply trains to get more weaponry and tools. Jake goes headfirst into a particular battle and realises that his kids have come down with him onto the front line too, when he gave them orders to stay out of the heavy combat on the ground. It's a big thematic point in the film when it comes to Jake facing the internal battle of being a warrior versus simply protecting his family. And it's not long before those fears start to hit home, after the kids take a small trip away from the new Metkayina base, which is now a hidden cave system in the Hallelujah Mountains. Revived Quaritch is busy revisiting the death site of the original Quaritch, and that is right next to where the Sully kids currently are. While he does end up catching them, most of the kids are saved by Jake and Ney'tiri, other than Spider, who Miles recognises as the real son of the previous Quaritch. The new Quaritch makes it clear that he doesn't feel attached to the boy right now, because himself and the human Quaritch are different due to his implanted memories, but they begin to form a connection, and the boy becomes important in learning the native ways so that he can have an equal fight against Jake. And with Jake knowing that Quaritch is now after him, he makes the hard decision to not put any more of his family at risk or the Metkayina people, and decides to leave the forest. Ney'tiri and the kids don't want to go through with this, but Jake brings them around due to the risk that it poses to all the tribe. So they leave and travel to another side of Pandora, known to be the home of the Metkayina people, a new clan of Na'vi that are biologically connected more to the oceans. The family arrives at the coastal tribe's home and begs for their protection, with quite the mixed response from the clan. We learn that the Metkayina are able to remain for longer inside the water, with their heartbeats remaining low and their tails being the shape of fins so that they can move more quickly within it. This is their natural environment, whereas the Sullys are warriors of the forest, so they have to learn their customs. This involves riding new sea creatures that are a sacred part of their culture, with one particular creature being the Tulkans, which members of the Metkayina clan can create bonds with, reminding us of the bonds that Jake made with his Banshee and Taruk in the previous film. Tulkans are massive whale-like sea creatures that are really intelligent and can communicate with the Na'vi, but we also learn about their history and culture and how they want peace more than anyone else. This becomes important to the plot by the third act, but towards the Sully family's earlier moments with the Metkayina, we learn that Jake's son Loak is the only one to bond with a Tulkan, and the one he bonds with is actually an outcast called Pykan. We discover that Pykan wanted revenge on the humans because they killed his mother during a whaling assault. That assault failed, but many Tulkans died, with Pykan being held responsible. And when Loak helps remove a metallic device from his fin, that same scene that we saw at the end of the Avatar re-release, things begin to get tense between the Sullys and the Metkayina's leaders in Tonowari and Ronal. Tonowari is more forgiving, and that's part of the reason why Jake and his family were allowed in to begin with, whereas Kate Winslet's Ronal is more harder to please, often getting intense arguments with Ney'tiri. But we learn that to them, killing a Tulkan is the type of instance that would create war with the Metkayina, as both the Na'vi and the sea creatures have a close connection. And when it comes to why the humans were attacking the Tulkans to begin with, we later learn that the sea whales are the only source source of Amrita, a liquid found in their brains that can apparently stop human aging. Similar to the original film, this substance is funding the recent colonization of the planet. Of course, Quaritch is on the hunt for Jake, and when he finds out that he is hiding within one of the many Na'vi tribes in the area, he begins to plot his path of revenge by using the wildlife in the area to his advantage. Quaritch burns local villages, interrogates a tribe leader who's staying hush about Jake's location, and he kills innocent creatures to no avail. While this brutality doesn't get him anywhere, he now knows that he has to persuade Jake to come to him, and the best way to do that is to influence the same sort of reaction that he got out of the tribe leader when he killed their creatures. What Quaritch doesn't realise though is that the resilience of the Sully family and the Metkayina becomes stronger than ever after they eventually become united. Of course, Loak and the rest of the children have a hard time getting used to their new home, but they manage to put aside their differences and have each other's backs by the end. Loak even meets Tesseria, Tonowari's daughter, and they have an immediate connection by the end of the story too. It doesn't just become Jake's war, it becomes a war for all of them. And that isn't the only power that the Na'vi have going for them, because we learn a lot more about Eywa's presence and how this specifically links to Kiri. Kiri, being the very different figure in the Sully family, begins to discover things bigger than herself when arriving at the Metkayina's camp, and this involves her being able to hear the heartbeat of Eywa, being able to hold her breath for a lot longer than the others can underwater, and the ability to control things in the ocean. There's a moment where she connects to what is essentially the Metkayina's tree of souls in the sea, and once she bonds with it, she meets grace in Eywa, with her mother making it clear to her that she has abilities beyond what she believes. We don't learn of her father, and I presume we are going to learn about that, a lot more about her connection to Eywa and her abilities to greater depth in the upcoming sequels. But right now, we know that she's super powerful and that there's something bigger at play with this character to come later on down the line. And this all ultimately leads to Quaritch's plan during the final act, bringing every piece together in dramatic fashion. The final battle between the Sully and the Metkayina tribe against the RDA humans, led by Quaritch, comes into full effect, and it's probably up there with Top Gun Maverick for one of the most thrilling final hours to a movie this year. With Quaritch teaming up with the quite annoying Captain Scoresby and his team of Tulkan plunderers, they decide to hunt a Tulkan down near the Metkayina's home in order to attract Jake. He already figures out that this is a trap and tries to convince the Metkayina not to fight back, but as mentioned before about the connection they have to the Tulkans and sea creatures, this becomes quite difficult. Loak and the other kids warn Pykan about the approaching RDA, and with them becoming aware that the other Tulkan have already been attacked and that the RDA begin to arrive, the war finally begins. Before Jake, Ney'tiri and the Metkayina arrive, Loak, Tuk and Tesseria are captured, with Quaritch telling Jake over radio that a war doesn't have to start if he hands himself in. Pykan ambushes the RDA ship though, and with that distraction, it allows Jake and the Metkayina time to make their attack first. While the huge battle commences underwater, Kiri connects to the spirit tree and uses her mind abilities to attack the crafts that chase her and Tonowari's children, while Netayam helps Loak, Tuk and Tesseria so that they can go and save Spider, who begins to fight back and disobey his recombinant father. With the RDA ship all but destroyed, Tuk and Tesseria rescue a now captured Kiri, but Quaritch manages to once again get a hold of Tuk. Also, while Loak and Netayam eventually get to Spider and all of them escape, on the way out, Quaritch shoots Netayam and he becomes very weak. They manage to get him back to Jake and Ney'tiri on a nearby reef, but Netayam eventually dies from the gunshot wound, and it's a heartbreaking moment for the Sully family. Jake tries to calm Ney'tiri down and tells her that she has to have a strong heart, and what follows is a powerful sequence of events where she tries to get revenge for her dead son. While the RDA ship sinks and gives us scenes that remind us of James Cameron's Titanic, Jake tries to save Tuk and Kiri, but sees that Quaritch has Kiri at knife point. After a relentless killing spree by Ney'tiri to get onto the ship, she eventually grabs Spider and holds him at knife point too, with us still knowing that she doesn't particularly have great feelings for the child, knowing that he is Quaritch's son. But in this moment, they both show that they do actually care about these children, leading to them being let go and a climactic fight between Jake and Quaritch beginning on the ship. Nearly all of them become trapped underwater in the time that follows, and Jake manages to strangle Quaritch, with them both eventually sinking below the ocean, having run out of breath. And this is where the kids end up being the saviours of their dying parents. Loak finds Jake on the brink of death and teaches him to hold his breath longer so that he can swim to the surface, with Pykan eventually giving them the final push with his fin. Spider finds Quaritch and decides to save him after some self-questioning, but once on the surface, he doesn't decide to flee with his dad. And Ney'tiri and Tuk are rescued by Kiri, who illuminates the water using a pair of wings, which give her longer underwater breathing. She gives them to Ney'tiri and they all rise to the surface, with the whole family coming together once again. The movie ends with the Sullys giving their dead son a funeral under the water at the Metkayina base, and they send him to the bottom of the sea where his body is absorbed, linking into what Tessaria says towards the beginning of the film, in that the way of water has no beginning and no end. He becomes a part of the energy of Eywa and Pandora, so that means that the goddess is real and that there is some kind of afterlife beyond this. And we do clearly see that because in the final scene, Jake and Ney'tiri share a really emotional moment with their dead son in the afterlife, following their connection to the underwater Tree of Souls. So what does this all mean for what's to come in Avatar 3 and the future of the franchise? Well, at the end of the film, the surviving Sullys are ready to move away from the Metkayina, with Jade saying that to protect his family, it's better to fight than to run away from terror. This could indicate that they are heading back to the forest to face the rest of the RDA. And with the RDA returning in Avatar 2 with the aim to colonize Pandora, we learnt that they built a city called Bridgehead, with it funded by the extracted Tulkan resource that stops human aging. So there's still plenty of humans at the Bridgehead base, and I would guess that this is the next target of battle for Avatar 3. I would also suspect that we'd visit more corners of Pandora, just like we did in this film with the Metkayina, so an element of expansion alongside Sullys fighting for their lost home would be a likely route to take. There's also the question surrounding what happens to Quaritch after the battle, and while he's not currently with Spider, I'd predict that we'd see some kind of redemption arc for his character in the next few films. I doubt they'd want to keep pushing him as the returning villain in every sequel, so I could see James Cameron maybe taking a leaf out of Terminator 2 and making him go on a reverse journey in the time ahead. What we do know is that we haven't seen the last of him. And then when it comes to Kiri and her powers, I'm sure we're going to learn more about how she is connected to Eywa and her central role going forward too. She doesn't know who her father is, and I think this could explain her powers to some degree, but with her being born from Grace's dead body, I would think that she's going to be more of a religious metaphor when it comes to all of the links to Eywa. We'll have to see what happens and where this goes in Avatar 3, but after I re-watch the movie this weekend, I will be doing a theories video for the potential sequel, discussing all of these things and more in greater detail. But that was my video explaining the plot and ending for James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water. Like I said in my spoiler-free review, this film is a visual masterpiece that once again adds to the list of great sequels by Cameron. I did have issues with the plot, the dialogue, and the pacing at the beginning, but by the end, I had a fantastic cinematic experience with the filmmaker's latest installment of this evolving franchise. I do hope this breakdown did help some of you guys understand the events and smaller details a bit better, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the film, so don't forget to let me know down below in the comment section. I will also be doing multiple videos in the coming weeks, including a spoiler-filled video essay and a greater discussion on what could happen in Avatar 3. So keep a lookout for whenever I post and make sure you don't miss any of it. For lots more videos surrounding Avatar 2 during its release, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.